And we're back. Welcome back, everyone, to the second installment of our interesting story with a friend of mine, Vladana. A little reminder, she's an art historian. She's an assistant at the Belgrade's Faculty of Philosophy, where she teaches art history, surprise, surprise. And she's the founder of District 6, an organization that seeks to investigate and preserve the architectural legacy of Belgrade. Vladana, thank you for being again with us. And let's begin today's podcast. Vladana, I wanted to ask you, what is your favorite secret Belgrade trivia? Like, what do you like to share with somebody who's like visiting and you know that they don't know about Belgrade because it's not some info that they'll find in a typical guide or even online, unless they're really very good into mining information in Cyrillics.
Oh my, there are so many. I would have to make like top 10.
Okay, this is the end of our podcast. I would like to thank our sponsors, Sexy Underwear. Seduce your man with sexy underwear. Vladana, you can continue now.
Okay, but well, for example, first that pops into my mind is, did you ever wonder why the Museum of Contemporary Art is in the middle of nowhere, basically? Like it's a lonely building surrounded by like a park, but basically it's very distant from other buildings.
First of all, that's not a park, that's a forest. That's one. And second, it is so well concealed that for the longest time, I didn't know we have a museum of contemporary art. So this is a very good question. Why is it in the middle of nowhere?
Well, actually, it was the first museum built in the part that was supposed to be like the museum part or the museum quarter of the city. So there were supposed to be 3 or 4 different museums in that area, but only one was built. So that's why I say like Belgrade is a city of missed opportunities. So they start a project, but they don't finish it. That's so typical.
Oh, yeah.
Entire Serbia, entire Balkans.
Yeah.
Actually, when I see somebody building a lot of pointless cultural projects, I call it Skopjeization, you know. And
yes.
And this is an early example of that. I mean, having a museum is a great thing, but you know, when you have all of these grand plans, but not the budget, it's easy to plan.
Oh,
yeah. If I may say, there's nothing more Serbian than a house or a building half built or without the facade.
Oh, but you know why they did it? Because they wouldn't pay taxes if the house is unfinished. That was the scheme.
Oh.
We like to avoid paying taxes or avoiding the law. I think that's something like, again, returning to the Ottoman period. We were probably used to scheming the law and the government.
It's in our genes now.
I think that's something that's deeply rooted into our genes, which is very bad. But
yeah.
So what can you do? And then I have to return to the story about the museum part of the city. I don't know if you know about it looks like an abandoned platform between the Pušće shopping center and the Palace of Serbia, which was the Federal Executive Council building in New Belgrade.
You took me there. I didn't know about that plateau before. And it has these beautiful wild succulents there.
Yes. Well, as I probably told you then, that is actually the unfinished Museum of Revolution.
Oh.
Which was supposed to be next to the Museum of Contemporary Art, but they postponed the construction for decades and then decided during the late 1970s to continue the construction. And the project was really amazing, very interesting project, but they decided to shift it between the two centers of power, so the Federal Executive Council building on one side, and on the other, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Yugoslavia, which is now the Ušće Tower.
Oh man! Oh, the
Yeah,
irony!
it's crazy.
Oh, the
Yeah,
Yeah.
like these names, the Central Committee, the Federal something something spaceship. It's ridiculous. Like all these. Oh my God, it's so
But then,
ridiculous. But
Yes, the
just so that we're
terminology
clear,
is fascinating.
but look at the
what
irony.
fascinates me a lot, we have so many unfinished things. Like recently, I'm talking to my very good friend who is a fireman, and there was a fire in my building like a week ago, and we waited a lot for the fire trucks to arrive, right? And I was wondering why it took them that long and why I didn't recognize anybody, because I know him, he's a fireman, etc., etc. And I asked him, why isn't there a fire station in the new Belgrade, which is the biggest municipality of Belgrade, the biggest one by far? And he's like, well, there is. And I'm like, where? Where? On paper. like there's taxes being paid, salaries being paid, but it does not exist. There's only plans for it to be built, and plans are snoozed, postponed indefinitely.
Oh man, snooze! You don't even have to say postponed indefinitely. You just need to say snoozed. It's enough.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. By the way, the very fact that instead of having Museum of Revolution, you have Ušće Mall Tower, that you have this high altar of capitalism built atop of an communist edifice is so ironic. I'm not even jabbing at communism. I just find it, so strange. Like you have basically the exact opposite of what it was intended to be. So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of funny. I think that
Everywhere you can build you should build a shopping mall. That's the new philosophy in Belgrade. Like I'm seeing them where I absolutely did not expect shopping centers to be built, big ones. They found room, they destroyed everything they had to get it going, but that's definitely happening.
oh yeah.
So
I
it's not just a triumph of capitalism over, communism. I think it's a triumph of just new age in every possible sense,
Yeah.
of technology over culture, technology over history. When we're talking about building highways, building roads,
Oh.
and then you have to destroy something of value, and not people today, when you say of value, like here, if it's like just something old that doesn't produce money, it's not of value, it's nothing. And that's the problem. Like I remember that tree being cut
Yeah.
a couple of years ago because the road had to go there. We're talking about one of the oldest trees in the region, and they cut it down. So
And that cathedral.
yeah, like
Oh yeah.
this is a triumph of materialism over spiritualism. That's
No,
my opinion.
no. That is triumph of crime over common sense.
Yeah, but that's just, the crime is just an instrument, because that's what I'm saying. The way things are perceived today, if it doesn't have value, materialist value, it's of no value at all, and that is a very materialist point of view. And just crime, that's just an instrument. Especially right now, like this very moment in Belgrade,
Mm-hmm.
the way they do things, like literally a couple of days ago, they started cutting down trees in the biggest forest within Belgrade. By the way, you can literally measure how good a city is based on the how many green parts of it exist.
Let us keep this topic for the destruction of Belgrade episode, because there's so much to unfold there, and I would like I think it will be better if we keep this to like to the 80s at the latest.
Oh yes, definitely, because the 90s are like the period when the destruction is starting, and it's, as I said, an ongoing project. So
Yeah.
yes, I think it's something for another podcast. So
Do you have any more fascinating pieces of trivia? Because I'm learning new things. I mean, I know you told me this about the museums before, but these little tidbits of information I didn't know. I didn't know, for example, why the museums were so snuggled up in all the foliage.
yeah, well, I mean, it was an interesting idea. I mean, to make that like the cultural part of New Belgrade, because New Belgrade was first of all intended to be the political and administrative center of the new socialist Yugoslavia. But then again, they changed it during the process, so it became a huge residential area for like mass housing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said, okay, we need to make more content. So they started building other things such as community centers and hospitals, etc. And like the part where people needed culture as well.
Yeah.
So yes, that was something very interesting. But since I'm talking about New Belgrade, I might as well mention Tito had quite a few comments on New Belgrade's architecture and urbanism, which I found fascinating, because everyone talked how he didn't mix too much with architecture or art. He like kept his opinion to himself.
Okay.
But he had a couple of comments that were interesting. So first of all, when he heard, like, that was the late 1970s,
Mm-hmm.
and he heard that they decided with the urban planning to stop constructing buildings over 10 floors.
Okay.
And he said, oh, that's great. I'm so happy about it. That's good, because I feel really bad for people who have to go like on foot every time the elevator.
and he was limping. He was limping.
Oh yeah. Well, how they say, your own tooth hurts the most. So.
Yeah.
Yes, and he really commented on the building we all know as like the Televizorka on New Belgrade, the one with windows that resemble old TV sets. And
yeah, my brother lives in one of those buildings.
Yes, and he said, for example, that he didn't like it at all. For example, he thought, oh, I wish they weren't so like in a very prominent location. He didn't like them at all, and he said, well, many say it's a fine building and the apartments are very well constructed, but like it's really ugly. And that's what he said. And the building got it was awarded as like excellent architecture. It got an award, but still, for example, Tito found it ugly.
You know what I find to be extremely funny about the New Belgrade part of Belgrade? Back in the day, it was a swamp.
Yeah.
And they basically geoformed it into, field that you can use to build on, right? It was a prime example of geoforming, but
terraforming?
Terraforming,
yeah,
yeah.
something like
Thank
that.
you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a prime example of terraforming. Like the best example I've seen ever is in Amsterdam. That's something to look into. It's like what they did. They reclaimed a lot of land from water, and more or less that's what happened with the New Belgrade. They basically used pumps and other sorts of tools to dry out the areas, right? And now I always remember, ever since I was a kid, I always wondered, like on New Belgrade, you have blocks, right? And they all have numbers, but these numbers are like somebody haphazardly decided this is gonna be block number 1, and right next to it you have block 19, and then right next to it you have block 44, 45, 63, right? It's like it has no order.
Oh.
And later on, I find out that as they were basically claiming a piece of land back from nature, from the water, they would give it a number. So that's the order of things. And I was like, well, if you had to, because I can imagine they never even thought about the mess this is gonna make in people's minds.
I just want to share a really short story. I was supposed to go to a friend's place who lived in New Belgrade, and he lived in a certain block of New Belgrade, and his building had a designated apartment building number. So I live in the old part of Belgrade, where everything is sort of clear cut. You have building entrances along the street, and even numbers are on one side, odd numbers are on the other side. And if you're going for the number 23, you go to that side of the street and you count. Okay, 1, 3, 5, and so until you reach number, for example, 17. It isn't like that in some parts of New Belgrade, because
New Belgrade is where logic ends.
Yeah, and okay, first the issue was I had to find his apartment building, but his entire block is sort of, for the most part, it doesn't go really parallel to the street, and there are a couple of buildings, and it's all haphazard. I couldn't find his building. I kept going in circles, and it was dark, and there were multiple entrances to every building. And at some point, I despaired, and I called him, and he was like, "Where are you now?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I think this is a playground. Is it a football? Is it a basketball playground? No, I think this is a kids. Oh, okay. I know where you are. I'll send my girlfriend. Don't move." And I'm there like a scared little puppy in a dark playground of horrors, because I couldn't find it. And for the next couple of times I got there, I had trouble finding it. Now that I got used to it, okay, now I know where it is. But until that time, oh man, I was literally half expecting to meet a minotaur there.
That's literally New Belgrade for you. As a kid, I was actually scared to go there by myself. Just made no sense to me. Especially I'm a definition of an engineer. Like I think very logically, and that is a place where logic just withers away and dies.
Oh yeah.
Because seriously, even when we mentioned Yuria Gagarina is one of the biggest streets in Belgrade, like if you're envisioning a street and there's buildings to the left and buildings to the right, it's not that simple. When you take a left turn and then a right turn and a left turn, you'll still be in the same street, and that happens in every 300 400 meters.
Oh yeah.
Hey Google, convert that to feet.
Actually, I think that New Belgrade operates under some kind of alien geometry. Like it's not Euclidean. It's weird, and you simply have to know. You have to feel by heart to navigate to New Belgrade. It isn't something that's done by logic, measurements, angles.
Well, now that I live there, I have to say, I know a couple of block numbers in terms of where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I have zero clue as I don't know everything, but the areas that I've gotten to know, I think I know them pretty well. But it took years. It's not something you just get used to just like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. I mean, I can remember my first experience with New Belgrade. I literally, everything felt the same, but now, of course, it's really definitely not the same. And I know New Belgrade very well, even though I don't live in New Belgrade. And I find it fascinating because it's basically one of the rare examples where you had a mass housing concept, post-war mass housing concept, which was basically the same in all Europe, both during the Cold War period, both the east and west built these projects. And Belgrade is one of the more successful examples that were not ghettoized or eventually torn down or declared a failure as an idea. So
Yeah, and became ghost buildings and all that.
yeah. So, and people, for example, foreigners, when they come to Belgrade, and because I do touring from time to time, if someone asks me, like for friends or colleagues, and when we visit New Belgrade, most people ask, who lives here? Is the crime rate higher than in other parts of the city? And I say, like, no. I mean, it's mostly. I mean, people do not realize that a very high percentage of university degree citizens live in New Belgrade.
Now, it's the richest municipality in Belgrade.
So it's very desirable to live in New Belgrade, and there are several reasons for that. One of them is infrastructure. The other one is very high quality apartments, very functional apartments.
Yeah, I gotta say, that's a bit questionable these days.
They have a lot of variations of apartments, but overall you have a lot of good quality apartments. I don't know in which type you live in, so maybe it's not. I don't know if you're satisfied with your apartment organization, but in general it's of mostly good quality, and of course a lot of people work in New Belgrade and it's well connected, etc. You have the rivers, so
yeah. Coincidentally, the new Belgrade is almost 50 years old.
Yes.
The construction was, I think, early 70s, maybe even before, maybe late 60s.
Well,
What?
it is.
When they started constructing New Belgrade.
Oh, they started right after the Second World War, like 1946, 47.
Yeah.
In 1947, they had several competitions for important buildings in New Belgrade, but then, like in 1948, the Inform Bureau resolution and the conflict between the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia merged, and an economic crisis, etc. So there was a gap during the construction of New Belgrade. But basically, the first residential buildings that were built in New Belgrade were actually on the Zemun side, the so-called paviljoni. And then after them, the blocks 1 and 2, actually. So these were the first New Belgrade blocks that were in the middle of everything.
I have zero clue where these blocks are.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea.
So do you know where the municipality is? Belgrade.
Yeah, I don't think we have to go into details, especially because I probably won't remember it. But I did.
I mean,
when you talked about,
it's just an idea. So it's like the late 50s, early 60s when they really started to build. But your area is around 70s.
Yeah, I know about this part where I live in. The construction ended somewhere, early or mid 70s.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so it's more than 40 years old, and combine that with very poor maintenance, and that's where we are right now. The unfortunate fact is, the rest of the city is even older with the same maintenance. So that's why New Belgrade might appeal to people, for example, wanting to migrate to Belgrade, and also the fact that there's a lot of new apartment buildings that are being constructed right now. Unfortunately, it has contributed to real estate prices being super high, like sky high, record high in Belgrade. And it's becoming a problem.
Oh yes.
But it's becoming a huge problem, especially because it influences everything else. You know,
Yeah.
these prices in the biggest municipality influence everything else. But something we might have just touched very briefly, and something that I think it's worthy of mentioning. Belgrade has this festival that occurs every single year. It's called the Night of Museums. Sounds familiar?
Oh yes.
It sounds very familiar.
So did anybody ever attend? Like, do you are you
Of
you have experience with
course.
that?
Of course, I'm an art historian. I'm obliged to attend.
I gotta say, even though it might form a negative opinion about me, but I have never participated that festival.
Why would that form a negative opinion?
Oh,
I don't know, like
I mean,
I don't know.
it's not something that. I mean, it's a manifestation as any other, so you can choose to go or not. I mean, it's basically made to popularize culture or museums for people who usually do not go to museums. So, I mean, I
Yeah,
like.
so me.
Oh, so you don't go either way.
Well,
Yeah, very very rarely because internet.
well, my opinion of you can't go any lower. So if you
Yeah,
don't
I know, but
attend museums,
she's
that's
new.
like well, so in character.
I know, but Vladana is new.
Yeah.
I'm used to you having whatever opinions you have.
But wait, do you despise museums? Do you have a museum
No,
phobia or
no,
something?
no, museumophobia. That's a new one. No, actually, I will visit museums. So you need a lot of time to go through museum. You usually just need a lot of time. And if it's a small museum, I'm definitely gonna go. Like the museum, Nikola Tesla Museum, right? That's small, you know.
And it's a
like
topic you
seriously.
might find more interesting than, for example, the Museum of Contemporary Art, for example.
Yeah, well, you see, there's big museums around the globe, and I've visited some of them. Like natural history museums, contemporary art museums in cities like Munich, Vienna, etc., etc. But for example, I was in Munich recently, and I think it has like the biggest or one of the biggest museums in Europe of like nature, natural science. I can't say for sure, but it's something I can check. And I simply didn't have enough time because in order for you to go to visit that museum, you need to plan 5 to 6 hours of your time. So that is a serious thing. It's half of your day to visit that museum. So to me, that it's just a lot. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm definitely not saying that, but it's just hard for me to set something like
But you
that.
are.
Did you go to the Museum of Yugoslavia, for example, in Belgrade?
You can imagine. No.
Well, that's not a big museum, and it's really interesting. So I
Excellent.
really
It
recommend it
it can
because
find its place on my list. It can find its place on my list if it's small.
Wait, is it a newer museum?
it's the museum where Tito is buried.
Oh, okay.
You can visit Tito's grave, and you can see how some interesting. Well, they call that batons, but you know what I mean, shtapeta.
Yeah.
Because they have like, I don't know, 20 or 200,000. I forgot, but it's like huge number.
Wow.
But they exhibited only like,
Mm.
I don't know, 100 of them or maybe less. It's
Yeah, there's something about Tito
that you don't like.
because I'm not a fan of the guy, and that's something that might be a bit of an obstacle of me thinking about visiting a museum that is partially about Tito. I remember, for example, being in Moscow on the Red Square, and somebody said, "Where there's the Lenin mausoleum,
Mausoleum Museum."
yeah, so we can visit. I'm like not a fan of the guy.
No, I agree.
Care.
I mean, I neither love nor hate Tito. Again, since I'm somebody who is into history, I tend to be more objective. I mean, he did
Yeah,
good things,
exactly.
he did
You
bad
exactly you
things. I mean, he is a regular politician as hundreds before him or after. I mean, so it's not about him. I mean, the museum is good because it has some very interesting things for you to see. So
absolutely. You look, I'm not arguing. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of value in visiting a museum. It's absolutely it's absolutely on point. The thing is, I was just trying to explain why I might not have been that drawn to that specific museum. But now that you mention it, and now that you've emphasized that it's small, it's definitely on my to do list, because we are living so fast lives, and unless you are a passionate historian or it is your profession, I'm sad to say it's not in the top of the priorities
yes,
list.
but you have kids. So they, for example, have excellent workshops for children. They have like family days, and not only Museum of Yugoslavia, but a lot of other museums have really like kid-oriented programs now. So it's a good idea.
And you see what they lack? They're not online, because that information that you're telling me now, this is very specific information that I don't get.
Well, you can get
anywhere.
if you like
Not in my
their
inbox.
Facebook page. That's all it takes.
If you like their Facebook, well,
I mean, you have to search for it. It's not like it's going to bombard you like on your computer or on TV. But
yes, you have to search for it, and that is the problem today. Like
if
today,
you don't spam, you don't exist.
No, you don't. No, you don't have to spam.
You
but
die.
The thing is, the wrong things are the loudest, and this is what you're saying right now should resonate. Should be sang from all the rooftops. Sorry for me using a bit of a poetic language here, but I'm just being honest with you. Like, as somebody who literally lives online because of my work and the things I do, because of my expertise, I am being bombarded with all kinds of things every day, and it's actually very hard to keep focus. And the best way to maintain focus is to, turn the internet off from time to time. Take a pause. And if I'm not getting bombarded by the right stuff, there is little chance that I'm actually going to see something. So when there's a good thing, where there's a good event, good festival, people are just not being loud enough. And that's all.
By the way, when Vladana told that the Museum of Yugoslavia has children's workshops, I immediately imagined your fridge covered with children's drawings of Tito, of
oh
and
my
so
God.
on.
Well, the red stars.
But I mean,
the prime communist symbol.
I must say, I mean, it's the Museum of Yugoslavia. It's not the Museum of Tito. So Yugoslavia was also the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, which was a monarchy.
Yeah, but also Tito.
Not...
But Tito, Yugoslavia, Tito. Go to United States and mention Yugoslavia. Yeah, Tito.
I know, I know, that's true, but still, it doesn't mean I should not underline that fact.
By the way, guys, we have been recording this for well over an hour. Vladana has overstayed her welcome, and we're going to kick her off the plane right now. So,
yeah, this might actually end up as 2 episodes, and that's it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, you talk too much, B.
Well, and there are still a lot of topics to. I mean, this was great. I love this.
Oh yeah.
I hope you enjoyed it too.
Oh, absolutely. If one thing, like, B doesn't have that much of an opinion of myself. I obviously am a huge fan of his. One thing that is certain, we love to have fun. So we actually appreciate you being our guest very much, because you open up so many different things to reflect on and talk about. it's gonna be hard to wrap this up
Oh, sorry.
because I don't want to. Even B is being fun.
Oh man. Well,
That's something.
so come on down, stop on by, hop in a Yugo and ride to another Belgradian night.
Oh my god, you couldn't hit a note if you were paid $1 million.
Of course not. That is why we don't have hit a note Patreon tier.
It reminded me of the whack-a-mole thing, hit a note.
I lost like forever. Like the notes kept hitting themselves in order because they felt so bad.
Yeah.
I think that's your
But
special.
you know what?
So
We can make like a charity game or something, like Whack-a-Bee.
Oh, no, wait. I have a friend who's an excellent singer and a Disney fan, and she can record this stanza for us.
Oh, I thought it was me. But when you said she,
But-
immediately when you said fan, I was, oh
well,
my
in
God.
this day and age, you can be a she, so
Well, or a dolphin,
don't go too far.
or a worm.
a she dolphin, or a warlock. Did she say warlock?
I understood
Said
worm.
But whatever.
Worm or worm?
Worm,
Worm.
like a tiny worm.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I love a low level creature. Yeah, I get it. No, seriously, this was adorable. I'm seriously looking forward to us speaking again and unraveling more and more of history of this wonderful but soon to be completely devastated town.
Wow. I certainly hope that Belgrade will survive long enough for us to talk again.
Not these guys.
I'm not sure, but we will. We have to have hope. So thank you for inviting me. This was really wonderful experience, and I hope we will get a chance to talk again.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And to our listeners, once again, this was Vladana, our wonderful new guest. Hopefully she'll visit us again. And just a brief reminder, we had started a Patreon account, not because we like money, it's because we love our time. And we are hoping to be able to hire a full-time producer who would end up producing our shows so we can keep finding great people and talking to them and having guest episodes every now and then.
I am.
Bye, B.
This ended up badly.
Fix it now.
The end.
No, seriously, you should say something about Patreon because you always leave it to me. It's like I have to say the bad things, the bad
Yeah,
stuff,
but
the cringy
I
stuff.
already have my Patreon, so I feel awkward to ask for one more. So you're sort of undefiled in that regard.
Oh yeah, but it's not like this is specific.
No. I have perfect solution. Vladana, introduce our Patreon now.
I don't know. They have a Patreon account, and I have an Instagram account, so you can follow me.
Oh, great. What's the username for all of you Belgrade fans who want to know new fascinating things about Belgrade? And share your Facebook page.
No, don't. You'll get stalkers.
I don't know. I guess it's fine. I mean, my Facebook page is District 6 with K, not C. And my Instagram is as my name Vladana, but with my two last names, which is Putnik Prica, that is Putnik Prica.
We will leave the link on our main page.
Which is on our website. Main page.
Shut up. Shut up.
What is that?
Shut up.
I'm already seeing the ending of this podcast. Shut up, just shut up, shut up. You know that song? Like, by the way, I pitied the producer who has to produce this episode and cut stuff
Good
out.
luck.
But please, shut up, just shut up by Black Eyed Peas. That's how we want to finish it.
And here it starts.
No, here's where it ends.
Okay, bye.
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 Bye-bye.